Happening now on Grid Tonight, war in the Middle East is also having an impact in the motorsports community. Our Formula One races in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia next month in doubt. Cleetus McFarland is set to debut in the NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series with Richard Childress Racing. Where will he race, and is he ready to take that next step? Aston Martin is expected to have a rough weekend in Australia. Could we really see a team start and park at the pinnacle of motorsport? Hello to all of our viewers watching here in the United States and around the world. Welcome to Grid Tonight, your weekly motorsports news program. I'm Kobe Lambert, and with me tonight are Omi from JB Motorsports, filling in for Joshua Birch, and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index. Throughout the show, leave your comments and questions in the chat for us to display, and visit gridnetworktv.com for our latest content. Now here's Omi with our top story this evening.
Yes, hello everyone. Thank you very much, Kobe. And yes, it is a show full of very interesting stories in terms of ones that we wouldn't have been expecting to talk about as well, basically 1 week ago. So things have very much changed in typical motorsport fashion. So let's get into some of it right now. So since we were last on the air 1 week ago, there have been major developments in world news. With the war getting underway in the Middle East, there may have impacts to the motorsport community at home and abroad. Over the weekend, the United States and Israel launched a military operation attacking Iran with missiles that ended up killing key members of the Iranian government and Iran's supreme leader. Iran retaliated by launching missiles and drones to go after American and Israeli targets, including several countries in the Middle East such as Bahrain, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. Of course, those countries host major motorsport events each year, mainly Formula One runs in all those countries. Formula E just raced in Saudi Arabia a few weeks ago, and MotoGP races in Qatar at the Lusail International Circuit. We also have armed conflict in the Americas. In Mexico, a major cartel leader named El Meco was killed, and this resulted in the Jalisco New Generation cartel causing chaos in several Mexican states. There's been a shift in U.S. foreign policy in recent months, getting involved in foreign conflicts again, just like the days of Afghanistan and Iraq, including Venezuela, which saw the country's leader Nicolas Maduro taken in darkness of night and flown to New York to face federal criminal charges, not to mention civil arrest, with immigration being a hot topic with ICE raids. Plus, the war between Russia and Ukraine continues. The global climate has changed quite a bit in the last several years. Formula One and MotoGP have race weekends scheduled early this year in the Middle East. In F1, Bahrain and Saudi Arabia currently scheduled on back-to-back weekends on April 12th and 19th, respectively, but that could change given the current events. MotoGP's Qatar Grand Prix is set for April 12th, with F1's visit there later in the year on November 29th. We've seen the FIA Endurance World Championship postpone the Qatar season opener, and you can currently see the statement on screen right now. The Qatar 18,012 kilometers, originally scheduled to stage the opening round of the 2026 FIA World Endurance Championship campaign on 26th to 28th March, has officially been postponed until later in the year. FIA WEC management has been in constant dialogue with the Qatar Motor and Motorcycle Federation in light of the current and evolving geopolitical situation in the Middle East. With the safety and security of competitors, personnel, and fans of the utmost importance, the decision has been taken to delay the event that had been due to take place on the 26th to 28th March. Following further discussions with our colleagues at Lusail International Circuit, when the race is held, a new date for the Qatar 18,012 kilometers during the second half of the season will be finalized and communicated in due course. The first round of the season will consequently now be the 6 hours of Imola in the Emilia-Romagna region of Italy on 17th to 19th April. Back in 2011, the Bahrain Grand Prix was cancelled due to Arab Spring revolt. Over a decade later, in 2022, F1 continued with the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix despite nearly a missile attack from the Houthis, photo taken by Rudy Caraziroli from Getty Images. Now, next up, we've also got the FIA statement on this case. As president of the FIA, so this, of course, comes from Mohammed Ben Sulayem, my thoughts are with all of those affected by the recent events in the Middle East. We are deeply saddened by the loss of life and stand with the families and community and communities impacted. At this moment of uncertainty, we hope for calm, safety, and a swift return to stability. Dialogue and the protection of civilians must remain priorities. We are in close contact with our members, clubs, championship promoters, teams, and colleagues on the ground as we monitor developments carefully and responsibly. Safety and well-being will guide our decisions as we assess the forthcoming events scheduled there for the FIA World Endurance Championship, which of course we've just found out the result to, and of course we're still awaiting the FIA Formula One World Championship too. Our organization is built on unity and shared purpose. That unity matters now more than ever. Well, how concerning are the recent events, and what could it mean for F1's 2 early season races in the Middle East, plus the MotoGP race? Kobe, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you see a war happening, anywhere in the world, is obviously extremely concerning. But first and foremost, what we have going on in motorsports, that comes last compared to what people there in the region, are going to. That's the most important thing. Are the actual people who are over there, innocent people who are being caught up in the crossfire, and having their entire lives taken away from them, their livelihoods, gone to places where they stay, being destroyed is just. Real sad situation happened over there. And also, want to send my condolences to the 6 U.S. soldiers, who have lost their lives over there during this conflict in the last few days. Real heartbroken for their family and friends, during this difficult time. A real sad, situation, just seeing this happening in general and not knowing where this war is going to go. Because as you can see, it's spread to several Middle Eastern countries over there, and it could get even bigger than that. Who really knows at this point? But focusing on what we're experts in here in motorsports, I know a lot can change in a month. As you mentioned, Omi, we don't have the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix until next month in April on back-to-back weekends, so we could see a lot change in that time. Maybe we'll see cooler heads eventually prevail, and we can get on, with everything and have those races next month. But based on where this is going right now, I'm highly doubtful that we're going to end up, seeing these 2 events taking place. It would not surprise me if Formula One is already looking at contingency plans to try to replace these 2 races with maybe 2 races in Europe, because I'm sure that, there's tracks obviously available, in other parts of the world at this time, so we can still, run the number of races on the Formula One calendar, so we don't have to be like, oh, we're going to run 2 less races than we scheduled to have. So I'm sure Formula One is going to figure it out. But first and foremost, it's the safety of everyone in the F1 paddock. That's the most important thing. And I don't think it would be a smart idea to try to host a Formula One Grand Prix event when you're right in the middle of a war zone, especially, when you have, missiles and then those Shahed drones flying around in the air. And it does make me think of the time the Formula One cars were on track in Saudi Arabia, and then there was a missile strike from the Houthis, like literally right next door to the racetrack. And then all the drivers, teams and lots of people in the paddock were concerned they did not want to race in Saudi Arabia after that, but they were kind of forced against their will there, and they had to race. So hopefully in this situation, they did not decide to host these events if it's too unsafe, and just try to focus on the safety here of the competitors. And yeah, MotoGP race as well is something that we're going to be paying attention to in Qatar. It would not surprise me if that ends up getting canceled and move to another circuit, or just outright just canceled around. And I'm sure if there's like they would probably try to postpone it first, and then maybe try to fit something in later on. But there's just really a lot up in the air right now. There's real hate to see the situation happening and affecting people's livelihoods over there in the Middle East. But we're surely going to be paying attention, to our neck of the woods over here in the motorsports lab to see what happens to the Formula One races, and then the MotoGP race as well happening this spring. But in regards to the Qatar Grand Prix at the end of the year, Formula One, I think it's way too soon to tell what could happen there, because that's many months away.
Omi, Kobe, good evening to you both. Hello, everyone. Happy Grand Prix week. Yeah, agreed. Just horrible stuff going on, whatever way you look at it. We just don't want to see people losing their lives, soldiers, civilians, etc., which is obviously the downside of war. What is it? The phrase, sport's the most important, least important thing. because we all love it, especially here in the racing community, and we're going to have to be sort of focusing on what's going on in that part of the world over this sort of early period of the year. Good stuff from the FIA and the World Endurance Championship to get ahead of the curve on this and not end up having a similar situation that, if you remember back to, 6 years ago, pretty much this week, in the COVID pandemic, at the beginnings of that safety car on the planet, when we didn't have a MotoGP race at Qatar, but we did have Moto2 and Moto3 because their freight was there and MotoGP's wasn't, because they'd been at a test elsewhere or something. I can't exactly remember the details now immediately off the top of my head. But the FIA WEC have got ahead of this and not decided to ship anything to Qatar, because they would have had the prologue test in the few days running up to what would be the race weekend at the end of the month. Then it's Easter weekend, so there wouldn't have been anything planned in then anyway. And then, as you say, Bahrain F1 would have been the weekend after, with MotoGP at Qatar, and then Jeddah the week after. I had a quick look through there, Omi, while you were doing the news and notes. Most of the sort of potential European circuits where things could immediately go to and fill the gaps on those weekends, because of course it wouldn't be too much of a problem to get back from Japan for then, which was the week before Easter, when the WEC race at Qatar would have been end of March. They could have got back fairly easily, but all of the tracks that you could point to and go, oh, they could go there, like Imola, like Portimao, like even Mugello, they're all taken already by other series. So trying to fit races in, if those are to get cancelled in the Formula One sort of portion of things, perhaps is going to be tricky. What I will also say, and probably I would hope that there is going to be a big meeting in Melbourne at some point this weekend, if not more, as obviously this news is moving fairly quickly. I mean, we've seen submarines being sunk and all sorts of things today. So there's going to be a chat and an ongoing chat between FOM, the teams, the FIA, etc., and the freight company, because let's not forget, it's Melbourne this weekend, Formula 2 and Formula 3 in support. They don't go to China and Japan. Their freight is going to go from Melbourne straight to Bahrain. That's the plan. And it's going to sit in Bahrain and ready for the weekend. So if they need to do something about Bahrain, and then F2, of course, goes to Jeddah the week after, they need to do something quickly before they ship all of those cars and all the team personnel make their, their plans, I'm sure, are made in already, but get themselves ready to go back out to Bahrain after Easter, and all the freight and all the kit that needs to go. So, and then of course Formula One's got to get there from Japan in and around the Easter weekend. So lots to conjure with, and as we say, this is a moving story pretty much hourly, isn't it, as we've seen over the last couple of days, with things happening and popping up here, there and everywhere. And there was a story on the news here in the UK last night on News at 10 of a plane full of people that had come back from, I can't remember if it was Dubai or Abu Dhabi, one or the other, and they said everyone on the flight was holding their breath until they'd got past Israel and they were in European airspace. So I think they landed at Manchester late yesterday. So it was a pretty scary time for all those people trying to get out of the region, let alone the people that is their home. So motorsport, yes, second thing on the list really in all of this, but obviously we need to touch on what could and could not happen, I suppose, over the next few weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. As we have Adam in the chat, who also, as we all say, continued prayers with everyone in the Middle East. By the way, I've got a few friends who live in the UAE, and we've all got friends, and we've all got people who are down there. Same applies to Joe as well, who's helped a lot by writing this segment of our script for us as well here at Grid Network. But he also mentioned to have a friend in Abu Dhabi still. She is safe currently, but not making it to Alaska anytime soon. And you've got people that are trapped trying to make their way through. I mean, Adam's already jumping on the plan in terms of what we could do next. I kind of want to see the San Marino GP come back. Of course, that's what Adam used to see as well. And some of the older motorsport fans would have absolutely seen back in the day. And then we've also got mentioned in the chat, cancellations and rescheduling is always complicated with all ticketing and agreements with the track themselves. I'm sure all of this is a logistical disaster. Yeah, absolutely. And, Matt, I was going to touch straight on that in terms of F2 and F3, because the day that they basically the day they move and start doing stuff is Monday, and the race is on Sunday. So we get done with Sunday, and Monday they're immediately focused. And remember, they've also got testing there. So FIA, they kind of do need a decision because they've got testing there to be done. So they were going to go there earlier anyway. They need to set up, and then of course they're getting ready for the round. So while F1 has a bit of time, F2 and F3, their next step is quite literally to be going there. So hopefully we will get a decision. And as you mentioned, perfect stuff from WEC to immediately be on the case and immediately getting things sorted. I heard a rumor about Portugal and Imola. Now, that's what I also heard. I also heard those two as well.
Well, I've just been looking. Here's the list. Let me just go back a page. On the 12th of April, which is Bahrain weekend, Catalonia is booked. They've got European Le Mans Series. Ricard is booked. Oh, that's a stupid clash one. We've got European Le Mans Series at Catalonia, and then Paul Ricard's got the GT World Challenge European Endurance Cup. Forget you Formula One and MotoGP for a minute. What a stupid clash that is. Red Bull Ring has an event on that weekend as well. So that's 3 potential places. I know that we already go to the Red Bull Ring anyway for the Australian Grand Prix, but still, if they wanted to squeeze another one in like we've seen in the past. The weekend after, which would be Jeddah F1, Imola has the WEC, as we've just touched on. That is now the opening round. That's the same weekend. And Portimao has GT Open. So that's 2 out for that weekend as well. Mugello also has an event that weekend, as does Spa. So plenty of these European circuits that we could go to will either have to be, all those series would have to be compensated by Formula One money to move their event elsewhere again or to a different date. So, going to be really tricky to swing things in and out of the calendar. It does feel all 2020 again all of a sudden, doesn't it, when we're talking about calendars being moved and shaken on a week-to-week basis.
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to make some form of decision, but the decision is quite complicated, and it's definitely a tough one as well. So so let's continue on as well with this story. The attacks from Iran over the past weekend closed the airspace above the region. In order to keep the show going, F1 has decided to use charter flights to move key personnel around to get everyone who needs to be in Melbourne there for the first race weekend. As the conflict in the Middle East continues to evolve, there will continue to be uncertainty with flights, as we know F1 travels across the world. Should weekly contingency plans be in place, considering the uncertainty of the global conflict and how it could continue spreading to other countries? Matt, we'll start with you.
Yeah. Yes. The answer to that is yes. I also have a feeling that what we now went, obviously Wednesday, by the weekend, he and you know who I'm saying when I mean he might be bored of all of this already and move on to something else. Well, hang on, the gas prices are going up and the oil prices are going up. Well, we better not carry on. But it's caused all the other stuff that's going on around it, to be in chaos. And he is the king of chaos, as we know. So, going back to that sort of F2 point that we kind of both touched on, and we didn't really know each other was going to touch on it. That's a moving feast as well, isn't it? To get to Bahrain and then F2 to get to Jeddah off the back of that, even if Formula One, if Formula One doesn't go, those F2 and F3 races don't happen. Let's be honest. It'll be like that F2 GP2 race at Valencia on its own all those years ago, and Portimao. Things are going to need to be watched for. Obviously, by the time we get to this show in 7 days' time, we could again be in another different place. We could have all of this stuff, potential cancellations that we're talking about could be done, moved, transferred, put to the end of the season. That WEC race at Qatar that's been cancelled, if we get through the summer and everything's back to normal, they go to Bahrain at the end of the year for the final round. They could bump that one forward and put Qatar perhaps the week after and have that as the finale next year, perhaps. So again, it's all a bit COVID-y where calendars were being moved and we can't go there now because they've been to a different tier or whatever, all those things that we used to talk about all that time ago. So I think the FIA, who we talked about a lot of the FIA on this program last year, MBS got his way and got himself back in. Of course, a person of that region of the world needs to be all over this over the next week to 2 weeks and get themselves sorted out and know the plan. And the same goes for MotoGP as well. Of course, we don't forget about MotoGP having that race in Qatar. They've still got 2 races to get through before they go back to Qatar, because we've got Brazil in a couple of weeks and then Circuit of the Americas the week after before Qatar. So there's still 2 more MotoGP rounds to go before the Qatar MotoGP race in April. So plenty for everybody to dissect, and I'm sure all of this is happening in the Melbourne paddock and on phones and emails and group chats and all manner of things going on behind the scenes, which of course we're not privy to, Kobe.
Yeah, I'm sure Formula One and the FIA are probably on phones, on computers, working 24/7 right now to try to figure out, as Crystal said in the chat, a logistical disaster that's unfolding. Yeah, very, very much like 2020 during the COVID era when they were having all these cancellations and all of that. But I'm sure they're going. I'm hopeful they'll come up with a reasonable decision this time, compared to what happened in Saudi Arabia last time when the missile struck and the car, and with everyone in the paddock there. Yeah, so I'm hopeful that they're going to have some good contingency plans in place to make sure that everyone is safe and that we could put on a safe event for all involved. And I was reading on ESPN last night about the charter flights to get their personnel, from all these different parts of the world to Melbourne on time. And I thought that they were able to do that extremely well based on what I was reading. That although it happened very quickly, they were able to put together a plan, at a moment's notice and basically just make it happen. So it shows that they can make quick decisions on the fly, that benefits all involved. So I'm really happy that they were able to get the charter flight situation, figured out. But the biggest thing is, depending on where this conflict goes, it could grow even larger. And then you're going to see flights, from other countries being canceled. And then it, just becomes a nightmare because, Formula One is often referred to, as the traveling circus, because you have people from all different nationalities and countries, traveling from all parts of the world to try to make this, show at the pinnacle of motorsport come together. And if you don't have your personnel, you're obviously not going to be able to do what you need to do. So I'm feeling cautiously optimistic that the contingency plans will be will be good enough to keep the show moving, and we'll see if they make some cancellations and potentially have to shake up the schedule a bit. And we also have comment here from Amber saying Aston Martin should not show up in Australia and blame the closed airspace to save themselves from embarrassment. And Amber, if you stick around, we'll talk a little bit about Aston Martin later on in our show during Hot Topics, because we learned some information in which that Aston Martin might really truly face severe embarrassment this weekend in Melbourne. But as I always like to say, we're just gonna have to wait and see how that goes.
Yeah, don't worry. We're going to get to Aston Martin and everything that is going on. Yeah, definitely, I think a reasonable solution. I would absolutely agree with that. But yeah, I'll absolutely agree with you as well, Kobe, in terms of I think it was a great job by everyone. Because, I was seeing a lot of images of F3 drivers being stuck and, all the drama that they were going. But to, reschedule, get everyone going, it was absolutely fantastic. Okay, so F1 and MotoGP are owned by Liberty Media, which is based in the United States. Recently, F1 posted an update schedule with information about travel, entry, and security updates from the US State Department. However, international visitor numbers to the US have been down since 2025. The FIFA World Cup is coming to the Americas this summer. Mexico will also host some games, including one in Jalisco, where cartel violence recently occurred, which was once rumored to be a potential site for NASCAR's cookout clash in the future. as we know, NASCAR's not returning to Mexico City this year, and IndyCar has been trying to get there for the longest time. Now, I guess our final kind of question to end on this very long topic. Do F1, IndyCar, and NASCAR have to keep an eye on security concerns in the Americas, possibly, Kobe?
Absolutely. I mean, like, even outside of what's happening, in Iran, Israel, and all those other countries in the Middle East, here at home, stateside, we have to keep a watchful eye. I'm not sure if you guys saw it, but on the night before the NASCAR Cup Series race at Circuit of the Americas, there was a mass shooting in Austin, Texas, where Circuit of the Americas is located. It was a man from Senegal, and he believed, to be inspired to do this, for his support for Iran. So after Iran, was attacked by the U.S. and Israel in their joint military operation to start this war, they believe that he acted out, in anger and committed that mass shooting. So that's something, that obviously all these racing series will have to pay attention to moving forward. And if someone wants to try to, let's say, get back at the United States for, launching this attack against against Iran alongside Israel, what better way would they do that than, potentially targeting a major sporting event? And I hope this would never happen, but it's always a concern, that someone may want to target, let's say a football game, a basketball game, any type of sporting event out there, maybe potentially a race. So if I were Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR, I would definitely, be beefing up my security big time, moving forward to make sure we're not going to have anything bad like this, happen. And Formula One, I know they have the Miami Grand Prix, coming up in just a few months' time. And like we were saying previously, a lot can change, with the war and all of that. But Formula One has gotten so big in the United States, you don't want to let your guard down and have something like that potentially happen where we could potentially see a terrorist attack. And you brought up a good point on me about, what's been happening like in Mexico. I remember just a few weeks ago, the Mexican military alongside, the United States, they conducted an operation where they ended up killing, one of the biggest, cartel leaders in Mexico. And then we saw mass violence all across the country. And it just makes me wonder, NASCAR was in Mexico City last year, and then you have IndyCar, who's been trying to go to Mexico City, as you say, for the very longest time. And after seeing, the violence break out like that so randomly, it makes me wonder, like, well, could we potentially see NASCAR or IndyCar go to Mexico in the future because of those concerns of violence? And this is actually one of the reasons why a lot of people, were hesitant, to race at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, because of the potential of the violence, like we saw a few weeks ago, all across Mexico. And, that's obviously going to be a concern as well. But hopefully that was just an isolated incident because of what happened to that cartel leader. And we don't see anything like that, happen regularly, because people who've, been to the racetrack in Mexico City, a lot of them have a great time, and they feel completely safe, during that race weekend. And that's what matters the most. But yeah, there's certainly a lot of security concerns, whether it's related to the war in Iran or, what happened recently in Mexico. And I think Formula One, IndyCar, and NASCAR, should pay attention and definitely, don't let the guard down, because if you think it won't happen to you, it potentially could. On April 30th, 2019, I never thought a school shooting would happen at my university, but guess what? It did.
Yeah, I mean, it's all going to come around. I mean, take motorsport out of the equation slightly for a moment. You mentioned, Omi, the World Cup in the summer in the States, for which Iran has qualified. Now, will they come? Will they show up? What will the FIFA do? They've obviously been FIFA have been very much cozying up to President Trump over the last 12 months plus. So they've got their own situation to deal with, depending on how long the current situation goes on for. That is obviously not motorsport related, but it kind of falls within the same category. I'm touching the wooden leg on my chair here. We haven't had, because you have to touch wood when you say things like this. If you can hear me, that is me knocking it. We haven't had a sporting event, again, I'll touch the chair, where we've had an incident of this kind, or a terrorist incident at a sporting event, really a big one, for a very long time. Atlanta 96, there was the bomb scare from Stewart, came straight to my head then. We've had concerts and things variously around the world where we've seen things. Of course, Manchester with the Ariana Grande one springs to mind for us here in the UK. When was that? 2018, 17, whenever it was. So it's always a risk. I feel like we've got I think NASCAR, perhaps, if you look at the calendars, NASCAR kind of slightly different because they're going to permanent racetracks and the security is obviously going to be heightened and tight when we go to Phoenix, Las Vegas, Bristol, and whatever down the next few stretch of races, Darlington, Martinsville. But IndyCar, I've got the brand new track, brand new event at Arlington in a couple of weeks. So city centre track, Long Beach, which of course they, I saw Jackson, our friend Jackson Lambo, sharing the reel of the track beginning to be made up this week. So, two big IndyCar events within a city centre environment. Formula E, of course, as well, outside of the, with the three that were in the question, perhaps. Not that they're in the Americas again for a while. So, yeah, I mean, everything's going to be on high alert, I guess, over this next little period until things hopefully will calm down and we can get back to whatever normal is again.
All right, Matt, you forgot one very important event from the IndyCar series, Washington, D.C. street race. I say so. Yeah, but that's later in the summer. So, that'll be a little bit further down the line. And, with this war that's constantly, evolving, I guess, by the hour or by the minute, depending on where you are. It could be a lot different in August. It could have, for us, for everyone's sake, hopefully it's cooled down by then. But, if it's like still raging, and it's gotten a lot bigger, I would be concerned about having a street race in Washington, D.C. at that point, for security concerns. I probably would just go ahead and, cancel that. But, I'm not a decision maker with that one. But I think they'll try everything in their power to try to put that race on. But I do think, if this race was happening this weekend, it would be a major security concern.
Oh, huge. We're going to get to find out the track layout on Monday, by the way. Marshall Pruitt tweeted today that we're going to find out the Washington track layout for anyone that's interested about that on Monday. Paris Van Dreaming, who I don't believe we've ever seen, and I don't remember them being in the comments before. You must be new if I haven't seen you, so welcome. The Indy 500 is one of the best attending motorsport events, and I expect some increased security. Yeah, everything is going to be heightened over this next couple of months through the summer, especially as I've mentioned with the World Cup. So could be interesting. Sleeper cells about to be active. Oh, World Weeb, perhaps you know something that you perhaps might need to keep to yourself. If Aston finishes the race without breaking down, that's an achievement. We'll come to AMR shortly. We all have thoughts on this.
Yes, we've got a lot to release on them. But yes, in terms of this topic, here at Grid Network, we will continue to follow the story and see how it impacts the world of motorsport. But we highly encourage people to be aware of their home country's travels notices and also their restrictions as well involved, especially visas and other requirements to travel abroad changes, and follow specific race organizers and sanction series for event updates. And of course, we'll bring you anything that we get in a week's time on the show as well. And from everyone here at Grid Network, I'd also like to just send our thoughts and prayers to everyone involved and hope for peace to return back to the world very, very shortly. Okay, let's move on to our second story, and we go over to the world of NASCAR. This afternoon, YouTuber Garrett Mitchell, better known as Cleetus McFarland, announced that he'll attempt to make his NASCAR O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, basically Xfinity, debut. McFarland is set to drive the number 33 Chevrolet for Richard Childress Racing in a third entry alongside series regulars Jesse Love and Austin Hill. He's set to debut on April 4th at Rockingham Speedway with sponsorship from Tommy's Express. McFarland's anticipated debut in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series is already coming with a controversy and questions about NASCAR's approval process. Up to this date, McFarland has had 5 career starts in the ARCA Menard Series. He got a pair of top 10s last year at Talladega and Charlotte. In the ARCA season opener at Daytona last month, he finished 11th on a Saturday afternoon after making his Craftsman Truck Series debut on the night before. McFarland put down an impressive qualifying lap, just placing outside the top in his first time in a truck. However, problems occurred during the race as he got loose exiting turn 4 and crashed out before running a few laps. Before the crash, McFarland was notably struggling to hold his line on the high banks of Daytona and looked on the verge of wrecking it before he eventually did. After the crash, many criticized McFarland for not being ready to compete at the Truck Series level of competition, with only 5 ARCA starts and only 2 of those on super speedways last year. To get approval from the truck race, McFarland participated in a private test session at Rockingham and ended up hitting the wall that day. Regarding his new opportunity with RCR, McFarland went on the Dale Jr. Download podcast on Dirty Mo Media to break the news. McFarland revealed that RCR gave him a call and offered him a 2-year contract in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series to enter him in 3 to 4 races per year. If McFarland does well enough at Rockingham, he's hopeful that NASCAR will approve him to race at Talladega. Dale Earnhardt Jr. gave him some advice, telling McFarland that he'll be judged by how well he gets out of the leader's way before they lap him. Last year at Rockingham, we saw how Catherine Legg got in the way of the front-running car. She ended up crashing, and many people felt like she wasn't ready for this level either. McFarland told Dale Jr. that he's heard the critics and he believes that his life as a YouTuber prepares him for criticism because he's had everything in the world said about him. He added that people are going to run out of breath when they realize he's not bothered by their words when he continues to show up to NASCAR's races to have fun. We all know he brings a significant following to NASCAR with over 4.6 million subscribers on YouTube. Whenever McFarland enters a race, the NASCAR YouTube channel always has his onboard camera ready to go because they know people will be interested in following his progress throughout the race. This step up to the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series could also see his next step to ultimately achieving his long-term goal of competing in the Daytona 500 someday. Graphic courtesy of Richard Childress Racing. Based on his limited experience in stock car racing, did NASCAR make a mistake in improving Cleetus McFarland to race in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, Matt?
Well, first of all, if you have come here from Cleetus's YouTube channel, all 4.6 million of you, and you have not subscribed to the Grid Network, please do so. I feel like this is rushed. I'm just going to say that. I feel like this is a bit rushed. Didn't go well at Daytona, Obi, as you've described there. Only a few laps in the race and ended up crashing. Single car test at Rockingham in a truck, hit the wall. I know he comes with a following, and I know it brings the eyes, and we've seen this to some degree with other people like Travis Pastrana, for instance, over the last few years. I would take the Travis Pastrana if there was a race between 2 people to save my life, Cleetus or Travis. I would take Travis every single day of the week and twice on Sunday. Other people have come through and, you know, tried. I mean, you mentioned Catherine Legg. Yeah, okay, she did, you know, an error in that race at Rockingham last Easter, caused the crash, got in front of the leaders, and she had a bad day at Phoenix in the Cup race just before that, off the top of my head from memory, trying to remember where the calendar was. But she had a great run at Indianapolis last year in that Cup race and finished just outside the top 10, or it was 15th or 16th, wherever it was. Was tremendous. Once she got going, it was good. And Legg, you know, has been in IndyCar, IMSA for a donkey's years, Formula E, everything else that she's done. So again, fair amount of racing behind her. Cleetus has been driving battered up police cars on his farm, and putting them on YouTube and whatever else he does. I'm not massively au fait with his stuff, so bear with me. But to not have a great run in the truck race a few weeks ago at Daytona after only a very, very small sprinkling of ARCA starts last year, to then suddenly be jumping from there to this race with RCR at Rockingham, and then perhaps to get approved for Talladega, which, if Daytona's not gone brilliantly for you, Talladega's kind of the same. Yeah, I just hope it goes okay, because if it doesn't, there's going to be a lot of people having a lot of questions asked of them, and RC might be one of them. And you know, he's had some questions asked of him already during the off season with NASCAR. So you know, he was kind of at the center of that for a little bit. So I just, yeah, if they want to put people in races like this, that's what the All-Star race is for. Oh, hang on a minute, they've ruined that too. So yeah, I don't know. Not for me. We'll see how he gets on.
Absolutely, we will indeed. Right, if Cleetus crashes out of the O'Reilly race, it causes a serious wreck. NASCAR seriously need to review their process. You don't see F1 supercars or all other forms of motorsport prove hobbyists in their game as well. And at least Rockingham is a short track. It's a lot safer to have newbies on shorter tracks than super speedways. Okay, well, Matt, I mean, I don't have anything to give you like physically, but you like talking a lot. You like giving a lot of your opinions here. What if we've just made you the president of NASCAR for a day? I guess I'll give you something. There you go. You can become the president of NASCAR. What are you going to do? How would you change this approval process?
Trying to look for something I can use as a prop, but I haven't got anything to hand. We see the young kids coming through, and they have to be a certain age to run on certain tracks. They can run on the road courses and on the short ovals like Martinsville and places like that, but they can't do the super speedways. But they've been racing in the sort of NASCAR ladder system, ARCA and Legends and Cars Tour and all that, all that stuff for years, and they still can't get on the big tracks until they're 18 or whatever it is, the limit before they can move up to the 1.5 miles and then to the big tracks. Cleetus has gone straight in here at the big tracks and it's not worked. So you could look at that and go, well, hang on a minute, he's jumping the queue. But why? Why is he? Or is it just an age thing? Because that doesn't necessarily bring with you, a huge amount of experience. So there does need to be some changes. We had some chat before about Jordan Taylor never got given dispensation to run in the Cup race all those years ago. Guys that have come into Project 91 have had to kind of be cleared in various ways. When you look at two world champions, Kimi Räikkönen and Jenson Button, have come in and driven, whereas other people you look at and go, oh, surely they can get in and they can't, or the other way around. Why is he getting in, he or her getting in, and they are? And it just needs to be. It doesn't feel like it's in black and white. Let's say it feels very grey and murky, the NASCAR approval process. I don't know what I would change. And that was the question that you posed, but something needs to change to make it a bit more streamlined. It's like the Formula One super license points. You can't get to Formula One. We talked about it a lot with Colton Herta last year. Having kind of semi having to go to Formula 2 this year to be ready for perhaps a potential Cadillac seat in the big show in the future. So there are routes. Someone, whoever it was in the comments before, they mentioned supercars. Nathan Hearn was tearing it up in Trans Am in Australia a couple of years ago. Came over to the US a couple of years ago, did TA2 there. He tried to get on the grid for the Bathurst 1000 with Gary Rogers in a wild card. Wasn't let in because he hasn't gone through the sort of Super 2 route and things. Now that process has changed since then, but that's another occasion where you look at the guy and go, he's ready to give him a go. He is absolutely ready, and he was blocked from doing so. So a lot of money under the table, sponsorship, different team owners across all the motorsport, across the world that are doing deals, let's say, that perhaps looking at the rule book first and going, oh, hang on a minute, if we do this or A, B or C, we can bypass that and get insert driver A, B or C into series A, B and C without too much problem.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so basically we need some changes, but you're unsure what the changes are. Maybe we'll extend you. Maybe we'll extend you for over maybe just about a week, maybe, and then you might be able to implement something.
I've already failed here in my interview for NASCAR VP or whatever, so president of competition. So I'm sorry, I failed again.
Oh, fantastic, fantastic. Well, okay. Now, we've all been very much wanting to get into this, so should we get into it? It is Aston Martin chat. So, our third story as well, and a hot topic of today. According to motorsport.com, the Aston Martin Formula One team is preparing for what could be a painful Australian Grand Prix this weekend. On last week's episode of Grid Tonight, we discussed Aston Martin's issues from preseason testing in Bahrain. They weren't able to complete many laps of testing because the car isn't up to standard and the Honda engine is unpowered and unreliable, going back to the early struggles from the McLaren Honda era, which of course, GP2 engine from back in the day. In an article written by Franco Nuganens, he says, Honda is completely unprepared for the F1 season opener due to multiple engine failures in Bahrain, which raises concerns about having spare parts available. And then they also added that the situation got so bad that Aston Martin considered skipping Melbourne altogether, which would have been a public relations nightmare for the team and F1 in year one of the new regulations. If Aston Martin had decided to sit out the season opener, they would have had to pay compensation for breaking the terms of the Concord Agreement. Aston Martin's chief strategy officer, Andy Carroll, who was a key leader in developing the World Championship winning Mercedes F1 engine in the past, has reportedly been sent to Japan to work directly with Honda on the issues plaguing the team. Despite all of the doom and gloom, Aston Martin is in Australia for the race weekend, but one major part of Nun's reporting has caught the attention of the motorsport world. He says the team only intends to satisfy the 107% rule to qualify for the Australian Grand Prix, so that's being inside the 107% lap time of pole position, so they're able to start the Grand Prix, but then they want to run a few laps before retiring both cars from the race. Link to this article is in the video description below, and the photo is courtesy of Aston Martin. Well, this is quite something. We'll bring back Kobe for this as well. How concerning is it to hear that Aston Martin may have to essentially start and park in Melbourne at the pinnacle of motorsport as well?
Well, I mean, I've been trying to decide for the last day or so. What's more embarrassing, staying home, not even showing up, or going to basically we're gonna take the formation lap, lights out, away we go, and then we pull in after running a few laps if the car is able to make it that far. So I don't really know which is more embarrassing, staying at home or basically, as you say, doing a starting park. And I know, back in the day, we saw starting parks a lot in NASCAR where a underfunded team did not have, the funding or sponsorship to run an entire race. So they would basically run a few laps and then they park it in the garage, collect the prize money, and go home. And then when you look at the report sheet at the end of every race, it'll show so and so retired from the race due to a vibration, or it'll be listed as like an engine issue or something like that. So yeah, that's something that we've heard in the NASCAR world over the years, starting park, although we've largely gotten away from that. I don't remember the last time we had a starting park, in the NASCAR National Series. But looking at Formula One, we talked about it last week. It would be absolutely humiliating if this is the plan for Aston Martin, that they don't feel confident enough in their car that they can't at least attempt to go to full distance. So instead of trying to go to full distance and break down at some point, which feels like it's inevitable at this point, given how far off this car is and how underpowered and unreliable the Honda engine is, it seemed like it would be inevitable that they would eventually have to retire from the race. So I guess they figured that they would, save themselves some embarrassment by just, just let's get the embarrassment out of the way early. We'll run a few laps, and then we'll just retire both cars, Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, and call it a day. But it sounds like it's been a complete mess. This entire process preparing for 2026 for Aston Martin. Like last week, we were talking about how Adrian Newey, when he came on, late on the scene, Aston Martin already started developing their 2026 car. And then Newey reportedly decided that he didn't like the car, so he wanted a complete redesign of it. And after that put the team on the back foot already. And so the car is behind several months in development. And then Honda have, done it again. Start of a new regulations, and their engine is not performing up to standards. And it's just an unfortunate situation because, as we also talked about last week, Aston Martin has invested, a whole bunch of money in building this new state-of-the-art facility, wind tunnel, driver simulator, got all the sponsors in place. They got the man they wanted, Adrian Newey, designing the car and leading this team. And on paper, you expect this to potentially, be a contending team in Formula One. But Aston Martin look like they're going to be slower than Cadillac this weekend in Melbourne. Everyone will expect the new team, the F1, to be the slowest, but it seemed like, that's going to be Aston Martin, and it doesn't bode good for the weekend when you have people who have legitimate sources inside the Formula One paddock telling you that Aston Martin is just going to show up to try to hopefully qualify within 107% of the pole time and then just run a few laps and then just call it a day. And that would just be, just really sad to see at the pinnacle of motorsport, to see a world-renowned brand as such as Aston Martin, retiring from the race after a few laps in what is essentially, as you said, Omi, a starting park situation. I've never thought I would potentially see this at the pinnacle of motorsport. So for Aston Martin's sake, I hope this reporting, isn't 100% legitimate and that they actually attempt to try to go to full distance. I feel like it would be better for them if they tried to go as far as they could. And if you break down and retire, that just happens.
Yeah, it could be a PR nightmare. Sounds like it might already be, to be fair. From what we've heard and seen over the last week or so, not good at all. More Alonso luck, as I was talking about on the show last week. So they're going to do minimal laps in practice, and then try and make sure they get within the 107% rule in Q1 and go no further, and then do 3 or 4 laps in the race and go to China, and then the same thing will happen there because it's going to be very difficult to do an upgrade of any kind of, anything in a week. And then they go 2 weeks further down the line. Oh, hang on a minute, it's Honda's home race. PR nightmare alert. So this has gone terribly wrong. And let's hope for everybody just up the road from me, half an hour up the road from me at Silverstone, where the Aston Martin base is, that they can get this turned around and squared away fairly quickly, and they can be even just at the back of the field and get for a full Grand Prix by the time we get back to those races that we talked about earlier on that may or may not happen in Bahrain and Jeddah. Of course, Jeddah, big sponsor on the side of the Aston Martin in Aramco, and of course in Formula One in general. So the potential for PR nightmares is high at this point. The way we do this show, I can actually now see the comments before they flash up on screen. And hello to Ben, who's put in the comments that we got start and park before GTA 6. What a thing. I hope you're well, Ben.
Yeah, Matt. And one thing you mentioned, you said run 3 or 4 laps. Like, are we confident they can even run 3 or 4 consecutive laps without breaking down? Because we saw, in testing, it was really rough for Aston Martin, and I was reading on ESPN last night that this situation has gotten so bad that over in Japan they actually started up a brand new team called a crisis team, because this is indeed a crisis. And send it, and they as Omi mentioned, they sent Andy Cowell over there to Japan, and then they said that Adrian Newey and his staff, they're like working the phones and the emails, communicating with their counterparts in Japan, to try to solve as many issues as they can. So first they want to focus obviously on reliability and then performance after that. But since they're so far behind the other teams at this point, they might spend the entire year of 2026, just trying to catch up. But at some point, they're going to be like, what, this is just if it doesn't get better, they'll just say this is just a disaster. We're going to write off 2026 and we're going to try brand new next year for 2027 to hopefully, try to get a do-over.
You wonder what the higher ups at Red Bull are thinking with all of this. I know obviously Christian Horner's now not part of the team, but Red Bull was Honda for the last few years until Ford came in, and they've obviously made their own RBPT and whatever else, but that could have been them. This could have been Red Bull going into the season where they're trying to get their trophy back with Max Verstappen. So big. They just about recovered Honda in Formula One from the last debacle with McLaren, as you mentioned, Omi, and now it's come back around again with the next set of regulation changes. So long gone are the McLaren Honda glory days of the late 80s, early 90s, eh?
Yeah, absolutely. Aston Martin doing a few parade laps in Melbourne. They're already becoming a laughing stock in the F1 paddock already. Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they're just gonna try. They're just gonna try, everyone. Just try and do something at Melbourne. I never thought I'd be saying that. They're just gonna try, but that's what they're gonna do. They're just gonna give it their all. Aston Martin behind the 8 ball already. Yeah, okay. It's not ideal. F1 is big more without Middle East.
Yes, it shouldn't. Well, I think that comment's pointing. Shouldn't be going to. It should be bigger because it's not going to the Middle East. Problem is, that's where most of the money is, which is why most of it is now on fire. Money, religion, bad.
It really is. It really is. But yes, this, as I mentioned, will be another topic at Grid Network that will continue to roll on and on and on. We've brought you 3 major motorsport stories that continue to develop, and we'll see how they go over time. But if you're not satisfied with that, Kobe's got more in terms of motorsport news.
Yeah, I got 3 more stories for you guys today. And the first one is the Cadillac Formula One team. They ended up naming its first car after one of the all-time greats in motorsports history. 1978 F1 world champion Mario Andretti will be honored with Cadillac naming the car the Mac 26 or Mario Andretti 26 due to his lasting influence on the team's formation and his role on the board of directors. The chassis name recognizes Andretti's legacy and establishes a standard of excellence that guides Cadillac ahead of his F1 debut this weekend in the Australian Grand Prix. Cadillac CEO Dan Towers said naming the first chassis the Mac 26 reflects the spirit Andretti carried in the Formula One, his belief that an American team belongs on the grid, and how his story embodies the American dream. And Andretti views this as the ultimate compliment and feels genuinely appreciative of everyone who continues to acknowledge his part in motorsports history. Photo courtesy of Cadillac F1, and the Andretti name officially, is going to be on the F1 grid. Imagine that, right? NASCAR spotter Derek Nealon will be trading his binoculars for a steering wheel on March 28th. Nealon will make his ARCA Menard Series debut in the season opener at Hickory Motor Speedway. He'll drive the number 28 Chevrolet for Pinnacle Racing Group, the same team he's been the spotter for in 12 of his 19 ARCA victories. In his day job, Nealon is a spotter for Kyle Busch in the Cup Series, Austin Hill in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, and Brendan Butterbean Queen in the Craftsman Truck Series. Nealon thanked his Richard Children's Racing team for giving him the green light to pursue this opportunity, calling this a childhood dream to compete on a national level, and promising to give 110% effort in this once-in-a-lifetime chance. Graphic courtesy of Pinnacle Racing Group. Ex-Formula One team principal Otmar Safnauer is joining Van Amersfoort Racing. Safnauer was appointed chief executive officer and managing partner effective immediately on February 1st, so he's already been there for over a month. He most recently served as the team principal of the Alpine Formula One team from February 2022 to July 2023 at VAR. Safnauer will guide and work closely with the leadership team to ensure continued success on and off the track while supporting the organization's strategic objectives. Team principal Brad Joyce said the addition of Safnauer significantly strengthens the team's long-term vision due to his expertise and leadership. Photo courtesy of Van Amersfoort Racing. And that's all of the headlines I have for this week. So I'm going to turn over to Matt for this week's Pick a Winner.
Yes, Pick a Winner, which is back for a busy weekend of Pick a Winner action. And you can get involved by using the hashtag Pick a Winner across the Grid Network TV social media channels. As you can see from the leaderboard, we have 10 names on there. And last year's champion is top of the board. Matt B is on 4 points to roll off the year. We have 4 points available for supercars this weekend because they are in action alongside the Formula One Grand Prix, which is also point worthy at Melbourne for the weekend. 4 races, one of them which comes up in looking at the clock about 5 hours time. Practice 1 is just about to start. I've got it on my screen next to me. I was hoping it was going to be already going before we got to this point to give you a live update from Albert Park, but that practice session has not yet begun. So races every day of the weekend for supercars, Thursday, Friday, Saturday and Sunday. We are about to pick, but again, these picks can change because we have up until the start of the races to get our picks locked in. But 3 races we're going to pick from myself and Kobe are going to do now for the weekend. And then, of course, there is the Sunday race as well. I tell you what, I'm going to go with Brock Feeney to win all of them, just for now. But that may change once we've had some qualifying and we've had some practice. But my initial on the show live pick will be Brock Feeney to sweep the weekend. How about
that? Yeah, man, I tend to agree with you. I think that's a safe bet by now. I mean, well, for now is to say Brock Feeney races 1, 2, 3 at the moment, but we're gonna see how qualifying looks. And then if Brock is qualified further down the grid, then we can obviously switch before the green flag start. And for anyone out there, if this is your first time playing pick a winner, you can make your pick. But if like post qualifying you feel like your pick is not going to have a chance to win the race, you can always change it. But by the time the green flag drops in each event, then your picks are locked in. So if you pick Brock Feeney and then the green flag for race 1 this weekend flies, when you want to change it, let's say on lap 5, you can't do that because it won't count. But always happy to see the supercars, here at the Grand Prix. And it was announced just a few hours ago that supercars have signed a contract extension with the Australian Grand Prix to continue racing at Albert Park through the year 2029. So supercars is going to support the F1 bill at Albert Park for the foreseeable future.
So 4 supercars races this week, because that's good news, by the way, about them staying around with the Grand Prix. It's their biggest crowd of the season outside of the Bathurst 1000. So 4 supercars races. Adam is going Brown and Feeney for Thursday, Friday. And as I keep saying, you've only got until about 6 a.m. UK time, which is 6 hours and 20 minutes or so away, to get that pick in for the Thursday race. So 4 supercars races this weekend to get a point for. The Grand Prix, of course, for Formula One. IndyCar at Phoenix on Saturday, don't forget. That is a Saturday afternoon race. And also NASCAR, of course, at Phoenix as well. Hello to Joe. Good afternoon to you. He says Feeney for race 1, and he's going with Joseph Newgarden as his early pick for IndyCar on Saturday. Get your picks in for all of those things, as practice has just suddenly appeared on my screen, which caught me out. Cam Waters top at the moment, but he's 3 seconds clear of the rest of the field, so that is a very early lap time. Amber's going for Brock Feeney as well. So yeah, 4 supercars races, Formula One, IndyCar, NASCAR. Get your pick in, use the hashtag pick a winner, tag us in on whatever social media channel you would like to use. We're on them all, and you can get yourself on the board. And as I keep saying, there's lots of points available. You can go from not on the board to the top of it if things fall your way with your picks over the weekend. Right, time for Hots and Knots before we go to end the show. Omi, of course, thank you for stepping in for Josh again this week. And the floor is yours. What Hots and Knots do you have for us for tonight?
Well, first of all, it's back. It's back. Grand Prix racing's back, everyone. Yes, it's this weekend. So first of all, big hot. It's been a long wait, but all of it's gonna finally return. And then, of course, you've got F2, F3, you've got supercars on. F1 Academy will be back next week as well to start their season at Shanghai. So it's all beginning to return. IndyCar, of course, begun last week. In terms of the IndyCar race, I guess I'll now dig deeper into that as I've brought it up. Mick Schumacher, there was a lot that didn't unfortunately go his way, but that's not the way that he would have wanted to start time. But on the other side, on the flip side, Hauger, hot.
Haven't got to see the IndyCar race as of yet. What I can tell you that was hot from the weekend was another thing that's back, to add to your back, MotoGP at Bahrain at the weekend. Oh my goodness, what a weekend it was. We had a dead heat finish in Moto3. David Almanza getting his first Grand Prix victory by about that much over Max Quiles on Sunday. Pedro Acosta getting his first MotoGP win. Okay, it was only the sprint race, but he still won. Controversially, some might say. I thought the Marc Marquez penalty was spot on. And then Bezzecchi, after crashing in the sprint, came back to win the main race on Sunday at a canter. So very much looking forward to how MotoGP plays out, because at the moment it looks like it's not going to be a Marc Marquez show. We were all so pleased to see him back winning races all of last year, but I feel like now he's ticked that box, everyone wants to see him beaten again, or that's certainly how I come across. Great, well done, brilliant. Now who can knock you off? Not literally, obviously, but yeah, MotoGP at the weekend was super, as was, I thought, the truck race at St. Pete. We actually got through the race granted, it seemed like it went on for 4 or 5 hours. It was only 2.5, I think, but it seemed like long, without controversy, without drama, without the track is jammed. There was a few odd scrapes and crashes, but actually it worked. The concept has been proven. Get a cup race at St. Pete.
Absolutely. More hot. I mean, I guess I have to say Alex Palou. Just continuing on last year. Exactly. As Oracle said, Alex Palou says hello to 2026. Pretty much. Yeah. He just came in and was able to get on with his thing, which in qualifying it was around people. It was it seemed normal. It seemed normal for the first bit of the race, but then when you get to the pit stop, he goes different, and then he goes longer, and then he pulls away, and everything that he does, it is very much just Alex Palou. So yeah, he's absolutely my hot as well.
Yeah, we all turn up to watch an IndyCar race, and then Alex Palou wins. Postbrand Dreaming says it took about 15 minutes for NASCAR. I'm going to come back to this comment, actually. It took about 15 minutes for NASCAR to grant Hendrick Motorsports' request to replace Alex Bowman with Myatt Schneider during the race at COTA, but Myatt is licensed in the area. Yeah, and he's won a race in the Grand National Series previously. Granted, it was a while ago, and that was a strange moment during the Cup race on Sunday where Alex Bowman had to get out where he wasn't feeling very well, and they scrambled to find Myatt Schneider working for Fox and stuck him in for the last few laps to get that car to the finish. Granted, by then it was a few laps down. Aistella says I changed that you need as at least 50 races to move to the next level as you progress up through the series. That would work. 50 races and you need to tick all the boxes: 1.5 miles, short track, road course, super speedway, and proven speed seems to work. And I saw this comment, and I was going to come back to it. The only reliable Aston Martin is a safety car. No, Aston Martin are not the safety car suppliers again this year. We are back to Mercedes only. This was announced a couple of weeks ago. I thought I'd seen it, and I saw your comment, Ace, and I thought, I'm going to check that. And it was announced a couple of weeks ago that it's back to Mercedes only. And it's Bert Mylander's 500th Grand Prix as a safety car driver this weekend at Albert Park. So congratulations to him. Will Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Abu Dhabi be cancelled or rescheduled? Who's to say? And Pastor, we talked about this at the beginning of the show. Obviously, rewind and go back to that when you can. But at this moment, as we stand here right now, we just don't know. Good evening, Matthew Orange. He says, we love to penalise prosperity around here. Certainly do. Joe says GP was hot as well as the tuk-tuk race. Yes. MotoGP went, everyone did that thing with the Lego. What could we do? And they put the tuk-tuks out on Sunday morning, which was to me it looked cool, but it was like
I haven't seen it.
It's been done. It's been done with the Lego. That was the first thing's always the best, and the Lego one was the best. Ace says my hot was SVG, 2 passes in the O'Reilly Series race, showing why SVG is the greatest stock car racer in the world. Certainly on road courses, but he was beaten by Tyler Reddick fair and square straight up. I just haven't got his number on the wall just because. By the way, if anyone's been watching on a week-to-week basis, he just happens to be 97 this week.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of hots and nots, I'm thinking I'm probably done with hots. In terms of nots, I'd say IndyCar as a whole. It's the series that you go to when you want competitive racing, and it feels like we didn't actually get much of that last time out. There was a lot of podcasting we were having to do across the race and talking about absolutely everything else, especially during the second half. And it kind of felt like, I've been watching F1 in 2025, basically. It was kind of like that, which is kind of not what you want from IndyCar, and it's definitely not what the series is kind of, said or designed, or what we expect and what we've seen from it before. So, I mean, I'll try keep an eye on this weekend, but I'm just hoping, we can actually get some good racing. Even if it's a Palou domination at the front, can we get some battling going further back, which it seemed like that's what was lacking. So everyone was just like running in a train like it was a race at Monaco and no one could overtake.
Yeah, I kind of lost touch a little bit with IndyCar last season for that reason, because it's like, oh, well, he's going to win again. And again, well done, Alex Palou and Chip Ganassi Racing, brilliant job. But actually, someone go up there and give him a race. We really do love an IndyCar race from second on back, says Matthew. Yeah, it's always great from the race for the podium and the rest of the top five when Palou's off up the road. I think it might be a different story this weekend at Phoenix, of course, on the oval. 18 minutes to go in practice one at Albert Park. It is a Penrite Racing 1-2, Matt Payne from Kai Allen, Cam Hill third, Waters and Randall rounding out the top five. That is your live Melbourne update. Also, not talking about Formula One, if you haven't seen it yet, after you finish watching us here, go to the Sky Sports F1 YouTube channel and watch their new opening.
Oh, my word.
They could have picked any song from the Formula One movie from last year to put as the opening track with the new title. The titles look great.
Yeah.
Take
It looks very good.
And Formula One do not mix.
Yeah, honestly, if we just replace the sound of it, it's absolutely fantastic. But unfortunately, we can't replace the sound of it. And, they've just put this. And, it really doesn't... it really doesn't work, which, is the thing.
I've got a feeling that won't last long.
Yeah,
I just got a feeling that won't last very long. But
yes, actually, I need to dive back into a hot. I'm sure JB would have like mentioned this and started jumping around, celebrating everywhere. Danica Patrick has gone from Sky Sports F1. Everyone,
no more Danica on Sky this season. They've announced their lineup today. I think it was announced this morning, wasn't it, or lunchtime?
Yeah.
And Danica is not part of the broadcast lineup on Sky Sports Formula One for this year, which will give her plenty more time to record podcasts about lizard people.
Yeah, F1 TV
Josh isn't on the show because he's clearly having a good drink to celebrate these matters.
Yeah, honestly, well, Sky Sports of course announced their stuff. Yeah, that's the only person that really appears to be missing. F1 TV also announced their one as well. So we've had both of the teams announced. Yeah, pretty much the same. Of course, you have Betty Glover joining the team, but other than that, it's pretty much exactly as it is because, of course, Laura Winter is off right now having her baby for the early part of the year.
Nolan Siegel and Yamaha in MotoGP, knots for Joe. Are they even trying anymore? Yamaha were fairly disappointing in I was about to say Qatar, in Thailand at the weekend, but I would expect them to come back forward, and I want to see Toprak doing some good things later in the year when he's had a bit more time on the bike. It's just not their circuit, and it hasn't been forever. There's not been a Yamaha go well at Buriram in the history of time in a MotoGP race. So where are we going next? MotoGP Brazil, of course, in a couple of weeks with the not brand new, but brand new for them, Goiânia circuit in Brazil in a couple of weeks' time for MotoGP. So that's exciting. We can get excited about that next week. But Nolan Siegel on eggshells in IndyCar, it seems, with the McLaren gig. And there's a certain Teo Pourchaire poking his nose over the shoulder, but he's just signed with Mercedes to be the reserve. So perhaps he's out of the question now for that seat if there was to be a change. Ryan Blaney says he's trying to convince Scotty, Mac, David, Malukas and Joseph to cut the dog leg this weekend at Phoenix. Good luck with that, I would say, in an IndyCar. There'll be front wings everywhere.
Yeah.
And Ace says, my hot IndyCar back to Phoenix. They need another super speedway. Michigan, anyone? Michigan, Pocono, Texas, even just a far Kansas, just a decent mile and a half would do, to be honest, Ace, to have IndyCar on a. We need a couple more ovals. It's good that they've got Phoenix back on, but we probably just need one more oval on the IndyCar schedule for the season. Quick update from Albert Park. He's still Matt Payne at the top. The clock is frozen at 17 minutes, and as I say that, the graphic disappears off screen.
Brilliant.
Matt, I will absolutely not stand for Tate McRae slander. No, hang on, no. Just Keep Watching would have been my top choice. That is the song. It just doesn't fit with Formula One. There are many things I could say about Tate McRae, but the song doesn't fit with Formula One, and that is where I'll end that sentence before I get into trouble with Joe and my wife.
Yeah.
I think we should end it there.
Yeah, very nearly at midnight as well. Yeah, I think it is best to leave it there as well. But yeah, that's another week done. And yeah, I think we're pretty much done with Hots and Knots, aren't we?
Yeah. Enjoy the weekend, people. It is a big one.
Yes.
Lots on. Get yourself in front of your telly boxes.
Absolutely, there is so much on as well. Okay, taking a look at our upcoming schedule. Sunday Grid Live wrap up 90 minutes after the NASCAR Cup Series race at Phoenix Raceway. Monday Grid rising 7 p.m. Eastern, recapping O'Reilly and Arca at Phoenix, Formula 2 and Formula 3 in Melbourne, plus other motorsports action. Please continue to subscribe, as Joe says, IndyCar at Darlington. Curious how that will go. Yeah, it'll be very interesting indeed. And fair enough, says Ben as well, to your point on Tate McRae too. Okay, please continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you liked what you saw tonight, you can send us a YouTube super chat to show your appreciation. We've now passed 1,700 subscribers. Help us reach our next milestone of 2,000 subscribers. Hit the bell icon to get notifications so you'll always know when we go on the air. Follow all of our social media platforms and visit gridnetworktv.com. Take 5 minutes to invest in the Grid Network through Patreon. Join Colin, Mark, Tichelle, Robin, David, Matthew, Crystal, and our newest Patreon supporter, Nico, who will invest each month in the Grid Network. We encourage you to join this great group that keep us on the air all year long. Once we hit 500 per month, we can afford to send our team to the track more often and continue growing our media outlet. Link in the video description. If you want to make a one-time donation, click on the Buy Me a Coffee link, get your name on the board, invest as much as you want, and consider buying your favorite on-air personality a cup of coffee, and they'll thank you on the air. For Kobe Lambert and Matt White from Grid Endurance Performance Index, I'm Omi from JB Motorsports. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.